Hey guys, it's John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well. I felt like it was time for another HELIX tone video with some huge and heavy guitar tones. A sort of 2021 version with some of the newer amp models and pedals that have been added, and also using some exciting new impulse responses from York Audio. But this time I want to go all the way, so we're doing heavy tones for 6, 7, 8, and 9 string guitars. Please consider hitting the subscribe button down here to stay up to date on all my activities, and dropping a like also helps out the channel a lot. That would just make my day, so I'd hugely appreciate that. And of course, dropping comments in the comment section down below is always welcome because I just love knowing your thoughts. Now before we start, in order to get amazing guitar tones, I have a couple of rules that I always go by, and I just want to go over those really quickly. This will help you guys to understand my workflow a little bit better, especially since my presets tend to be very simple and basic. And do note that for the purpose of this video, I will be using HELIX native in my DAW, but of course you can get all the tones in this video in your HX Stomp, your Pod Go, and of course your HELIX hardware. Now one very important thing is to keep the quality of the source, so the DI tracks that you're recording, as good as possible. So use a good guitar with good strings, good pickups, and record those guitars properly with a good interface or input on your modeling device. Now the inputs on the HELIX and the HX Stomp, etc., those are all fine, so you should be able to get some amazing guitar tones with those, of course. Then I always like to use as few means as possible to get a good guitar tone. So a good amp model with a good IR and maybe some room reverb should be more than enough to get a great basic guitar tone. Sometimes a pedal up front as well, as you will see in this video. So note that I always try to avoid using EQ on guitars as much as possible. If something doesn't sound right, I always go to the amp model first and try to tweak the EQ on the amplifier. And if it still doesn't sound right, I always go back and choose another impulse response that works better for the amplifier. I'm using York Audio impulse responses for this video, and with those IRs it's always very easy to find the right IR. And I like to use mic mixes, which I usually prefer over single mic IRs. Good IRs, in my opinion, are crucial to get a great tone out of a modeler. So use a good source, use good IRs, and keep it simple. Those are some of my basic principles to get a great tone. Now let's get started with the 6-string guitar tones. And for this purpose, I will be using my ESP LTD Phoenix Black Metal with the Fishman Modern in it. Let's take a listen to the riffs and then I will show you the preset and all the settings. Here we go. Awesome, that sounded huge! Now for this preset I wanted to use the Mandarin Rocker model, which is based on the Orange Rocker. It just suits these riffs very well in my opinion. Especially that first riff has a sort of stonery vibe to it, so it works really well. However, there are also some more heavy, sort of fast death metal riffs near the end, and to bring more focus, tightness and clarity to the guitars, I really wanted to use a boost pedal up front this time. Those Orange Rocker amps always sound very fat and huge, and that sort of tone does not always work well for heavy metal or very fast metal. And there's also some nice fizzly sizzle going on in those amplifiers that I really enjoy. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the preset. I have the input gate on, as will be the case for all the tones in this video. Then we have 4 blocks: a drive block, an amp block, a high-res IR block, and a reverb block. We're using the Scream 808 in the drive block to boost the amp with fairly high tone settings to open up the sound of the guitar and to give it a little bit more bite. Then the Mandarin rocker model, of course, with gain at 6.8 and the EQ and master volume controls at noon. Now this amplifier does not need a lot of tweaking in order for it to sound good, just as with the real amplifier. In the high-res IR block, I'm using a York Audio IR from the ORNG 412 V30 pack. Orange cabinets just work really well together with orange amplifiers, and I just love their sound in general. I'm on Mic Mix 10 as that has a very nice mix-ready flavor to it with a good open sound. There's a low cut going on in the cab block at 95 Hz just to make some room for the kick and bass in the mix. And we're ending the chain with the Legacy Room Reverb, just to make it sound slightly livelier and just more realistic. And that's it, no further post-processing was applied. Now let's also take a quick listen to those guitars in isolation, so without the drums and bass. Here we go. Awesome! Now let's check out some heavy 7-string riffs with my ESP LTD SC607B 7-string baritone guitar, the Stef and Carpenter signature model with the EMGs in it, so the older model. Let's take a listen to those riffs and tones. Here we go. Awesome, nice and thick. Let's take a look at the preset. As you can see, the layout is exactly the same as the previous clip. The input gate is on, of course, and then there's another drive block. This time I chose the Horizon drive as that really helps to tighten up those low B flat notes on the 7th string. I've turned the gate that was built into the pedal off as it was a little bit too much for my taste. And then for the amp block, I'm using the Rev Gen Purple amplifier. Not an amp block that I like to use often, so I just wanted to give that one another go. And honestly, also to avoid going straight to the badonk. Just some basic amp settings and the aggression is turned up all the way to 2. And then of course the 2048 IR block, this time with Mix 01 from the York Audio MES212 V30, which is based on an oversized Mesa 2x12 rectifier cabinet loaded with V30s. It sounds great and it works really well together with this amp model. And again a little low cut, this time at 83 Hz, and then the room reverb with the same settings as before. And that's it, again very simple. Now let's take a listen to those guitars in isolation for a little bit. Here we go. Great! Now let's check out some 8-string guitar tones with my ESP LTD SC608B, the 8-string baritone guitar, the Stef and Carpenter signature model with the Stef Fishmans in it. Let's go ahead and take a listen to those heavy 8-string riffs. Here we go. awesome, loved those tones. Very low and thick and guttural, but still with plenty of clarity and tightness. This preset only has 3 blocks, so no drive block up front this time. And of course, I'm using the Line 6 Badonk amplifier model this time, as it's so awesome and it works so well with extended range guitars. And since that amp model in combination with the Fishman sounds very tight already, I just didn't need a drive block up front. Now let's check out the preset. Again, the input gate is on, no additional blocks needed for that. And then the Badonk amp model, of course, still such a legendary amp model. It's just perfect in many ways, and as I said, it works so well with lower tunings. Nothing special going on in terms of settings. Then the IR block, of course, with a York Audio IR. This time I'm using the Mix 01 file from the ZILA 212 V30 pack, which is based on a 2x12 Zilla cabinet loaded with vintage 30s. Sounds great! And then of course the Legacy Room Reverb block again with similar settings as before, just for that natural ambience. Now let's take a quick listen to the isolated guitars. Here we go. Awesome! Now let's move on to the final part, the 9-string stuff, using my Ibanez RGIB 9FME 9-string guitar. And that guitar is loaded with EMG 909s and it's a killer guitar. I really love that instrument. And this one is tuned to standard, so with the low C sharp up top. Let's take a listen to the riffs. Here we go. Whoa, very heavy indeed. Now let's take a look at the preset. Again, with a very similar layout, we do have a drive block on this time, as it does help to bring more clarity to those super low notes. The input gate is on, of course, as before, and for the drive block I'm using the plain old OD808 with fairly high tone settings to bring out more clarity. As you can see, I'm changing the amount of tone by snapshot. For the lower 9th string riffs, I have the tone control up all the way, because we need that clarity for those super low notes, but for the riffs on the other strings I've toned it down a little. Now that's a very nice trick for getting the most out of your 9-string or extended range guitar, as that very low string will probably sound and react a little bit differently than the other strings. And this can kind of help to balance things out a little bit, making little changes like that. Then of course the Badonk, nothing special going on there, plenty of treble and presence as always for the clarity. In the IR block, I'm using the Mix 01 file from the York Audio MES412OS, which is based on an oversized 4x12 rectifier cabinet with V30s, of course. We have a little low cut going on at 70 Hz, and finally, again, the subtle room reverb. And that's it. Again, very simple, but it sounds great. That's all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please drop a like and a subscribe, as that would make me very happy. And also don't forget to drop a comment down below on what your thoughts are on these tones. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you very, very soon. Cheers!